All right, graphing quadratic equations. So this is the last section that we're going to do on quadratics, and we're going to talk about what the graphs of quadratic equations look like. But first, let's do a little review. We're going to graph these linear equations. Okay, they're linear because they have a power of 1. We're going to graph these linear equations and take a look at what they look like. So take a moment, fill out the table of values here, and graph the linear equation. All right, now when you filled out the table of values for the first one, this is what you should have gotten. And it should have looked like a straight line, like this. And the x-intercept, it crosses the x-axis at 0, 0 there. So the x-intercept is 0. And then it crosses the y-axis at 0, so the y-intercept is 0. And then in the second one, here's what your table of values should have looked like. And this is what your line should have looked like. Now, what's the x-intercept of this line? Where does the line cross the x-axis? Crosses right here at -2. And then where does it cross the y-axis, the y-intercept? At +2, so it's 2. That's just a coincidence. But x-intercept is where it crosses the x-axis, y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. Now, when you have a quadratic equation, okay, so these were all linear equations, and that's why we call these linear, because they make a line, okay? When you have a quadratic equation, they have a degree of 2, and the graphs form what we call a parabola, okay? So basically, it's going to form a U-shaped curve. So if we fill out the table of values here, we're going to graph each equation. I have a table of values that I'm going to fill in. Okay. If I have y equals x squared, I'm going to square x, and that will be my y value. So if I do -2 squared, what's -2 squared? Remember, +4, because -2 times -2 is going to give you +4. What's -1 squared? It's going to give you +1. What's 0 squared? That's 0. 1 squared is 1. And 2 squared is 4. Okay. Now I'm going to plot these points on the graph. So the first point I have is -2, 4. Then I have -1, 1. 0, 0. 1, 1. And 2, 4. And now you see how it kind of is making that U shape there? I'm going to connect that, and that's my graph. Now the x-intercept, okay, it doesn't really cross the x-axis, but you can see it comes down and touches the x-axis right here at 0. And then the y-intercept, it crosses the y-axis here at 0. That's what your graph should look like. Now for B, it's x squared minus 1. So B is just like A, but the only difference is once we get x squared, we're going to subtract 1. And I'm using the same x value, so actually I'm going to use this table over here to help me. This is already x squared. X squared is done. I just got to subtract 1. So if I do -2 squared, that gave me 4. 4 minus 1 is going to give me 3. What's -1 squared minus 1 going to give me? It's going to give me 0. What's 0 squared minus 1 going to give me? 0 squared is 0, and then minus 1 is -1. What's 1 squared minus 1 going to give me? It'll give me 0, because 1 squared is 1, and then 1 minus 1 is 0. And then what's 2 squared minus 1 going to give me? 2 squared is 4, and then minus 1 is 3. So let me plot these points. I've got -2, 3. That's my first point. Over -1 up 0. Over 0 down 1. Over 1 up 0. And over 2 up 3. And there's my U shape again. Let me connect the dots. And now let's talk about our x and y intercepts. My x-intercept is where the graph crosses the x-axis. So where does the graph cross the x-axis? It actually crosses twice. It crosses here at -1 and at +1. So they're both my x-intercepts. And then my y-intercept, it crosses the y-axis down here at -1. All right, I'm going to do 2 more here. So this one is -x². If I have -x², here's something you got to be careful of. When I'm doing this problem, if I have negative and then -2², that's what this is going to look like. It's negative and then -2². So if I do -2², that's going to give me +4, remember, because negative times negative gives you positive. But then there's that negative out front. So I'm actually going to end up with -4 as a result. So do the same thing with -1². What will that give me? That's going to give me -1. 0 is kind of nice because when you do 0 squared, it just gives you 0, and then there's no -0. Let's do -1². What's that going to give me? It's going to give me -1. And then let's do -2². What's that going to give me? It's going to give me -4. So now if I plot these points, I have -2, -4. I have -1, -1. 0, 0, 1, -1, and 2, -4. Now I have that U shape, but it's upside down. And it looks a lot like the one up here, my x-intercept, where it doesn't cross the x-axis, but it comes up and touches the x-axis. That's right there in the middle at 0. And then the y-intercept, where it crosses the y-axis, is 0. And now the last one, D. D is -x² plus 4, so I already have -x² here. So why don't I just take these numbers and add 4? What's -4 plus 4 going to give me? That'll give me 0. -1 plus 4 will give me 3. 0 plus 4 gives me 4. And -1 plus 4 gives me 3. -4 plus 4 gives me 0. And now I'm going to plot this. So I have -2, 0. -1, 3, 0, 4, 1, 3, and 2, 0. And now I connect them, and look, we have that upside down looking U shape. Okay. And where are my x-intercepts? Where does the graph cross the x-axis? Well, it crosses in 2 places. It crosses in -2 and +2. And then where does it cross the y-axis? What's my y-intercept? My y-intercept is up here at 4. Okay.